by alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon by taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Friend from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
The snow is thick on the ground and the smell of soccer is thick in the air. This is the People's Pitch. I am Nate. That is John. This is the official one and only podcast of your Minneapolis City SC. With so much soccer news lately out in the world and here at home, are you as captivated by the heavy musk of soccer that's taken over this week, John?
Well, I mean, yes, always, Nate. More soccer is better. But I mean, there's just been tons of news revolving around our cousins across the river. So, that's kind of been taking up my my time. Depending on when you're listening to this, our schedule is out. We'll talk about that likely next week.
Yep.
But we've been announcing tons of players. So it's only really 6 weeks left until the guys hit the pitch for the first time, and things are heating up in the news department, as Nate mentioned. NPSL player announcements are in full swing, so we will recap who's been around or who's been announced and reintroduce you to those wily veterans. One of those wily veterans will be joining us to talk about what's going on in his world and how things are coming together on the training pitch in preseason as Minneapolis City prepares to take on Chicago FC United, and that is Max Stiegwardt will be in the house a little bit later on.
Woo.
So
hey, John.
Let's just do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Real quick, because you brought up news from across the river from our maybe more adult friends. And as we're talking about this match against Chicago FC United, I've got a wild conspiracy theory for you.
What's that?
So, United trades Wyatt Olmsberg to Chicago.
Yes. Are we going to see Wyatt Olmsberg?
Did Chicago bring in Wyatt Olmsberg because they're afraid of Minneapolis City in the U.S. Open Cut?
The easy answer is yes.
I mean, it's clear, right? They needed to shore up. We already talked about this, that Chicago is going to be struggling with a lack of college players. They need to probably shore up their defense. They see who we're putting out. There. So they give old Mini United a call, ring a ding ding. Hey, you got any backup defenders that have spent a lot of time at USL that we can that we can grab and maybe hand you something that's off the scrap heap that you can throw at left back? And United said, yeah, we can do that.
I think it went something more like, do you happen to have any room for us to offload a terrible draft pick?
And they're like, and Minnesota and good old Manny said, we love terrible draft picks. Bring them in.
We'll trade him for another winger. Anyways, yes, I think that the conspiracy is high, Nate. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about our crosstown neighbors. So we haven't in a while. Maybe talk about them next week when we talk about our schedule. How does that sound?
Yeah. Anyway, keep an eye on that. I think we're going to run into our old boy Wyatt. But as far as Minneapolis City goes, John, the player announcements have been coming fast and furious from the Twitter machine. And if fans have been following along, they really should be liking what they're seeing. So let's dive right in and give our 2 cents on all the returning players announced to this date. Shall we?
We shall.
All right. So starting off, we've got club captain and sure to be a future legend, Aaron Olson. AO has been with us at the inception of the club, and he's also been an ever steady presence with Stegman's in both back lines. He is the club's all-time minutes leader, and he is the all-time leader in yellow cards as well. 52 games, he has racked up 4,444 minutes, which is pretty big, and 13 yellow cards, which is 3 more, I think, than the second most, which is probably will. But anyway, John, what does AO bring coming back to Minneapolis City for what is his 5th season?
So he's not only one of, a few players that plays with like an added level of grit in his game, as you can see by his cautionary record that you mentioned. But he's the guy that no matter how he feels, what his run of form is during training in the week, has he picked up an injury? But as soon as that whistle blows, he fires up the Jets, and he is at 100 for the whole entire time he's on the pitch. As he kind of gets up in years, as he's been with us for 5 years, and obviously he wasn't a college player when he started out with us. He was had been graduated for a few years. As he gets on in years, I think you'll see him play a little bit more centrally in the back line where he had last year, where I think his speed and recovery ability is a real asset there. You obviously lose a little bit of size, but he is willing to get up in the air to win a ball. But it allows him to kind of rest his body a little bit. I mean, I think you can kind of harken back to recently to when he battled for 90 minutes in that playoff game against Detroit. Thought he did fantastic back there against some really good attacking players, including some with size. This ability to play multiple positions across the back line. And I think a few guys we're going to talk about today are guys that kind of can play a couple different places. But for AO, the ability, depending upon the matchup that Coach Matt wants to deploy, he can cover out wide. He has a willingness to jump forward in the attack when he's there, seeing he's scored a few pretty big goals for the club via going on his patented AO walkabouts and joining his friends up top. But I think in general, his versatility as he gets on a little bit, where he can play a very important role centrally, it is a big plus.
Nice. Next up, we've got another mainstay that came to us via the Stegman's connection, but really to Minneapolis City has been a newer addition, and we're talking about striker Nick Hutton. The former Big Ten track star has been about as efficient as they come for the Crows up top as offensive output comes, John. 10 goals scored over his career to go with 6 assists. What do you see that makes Nick Hutton such a success at this level of soccer?
Well, first off, what I didn't know until getting a couple beers with him after training last week was that he's a 3-time Division I All-American track athlete.
3-time? I thought it was just that one time.
No, that's why I said too. And he's like, no, it was my sophomore through senior year. I was like, Jesus Christ!
Wow.
I thought you were just like good at track, but no wonder why you didn't play soccer in college. But anyways, as far as Hutton goes, I think for me it's similar to what you get from AO. You just have it at the offensive end. He's a physical beast that fights like hell. He provides a very good off the ball leadership. I think it's something that we don't talk about a lot with his communication, and then obviously the movement that he has that you can actually see. But I mean, the guy's a chatterbox on the field, helping orchestrate things. Obviously, he has that track speed, and to top it off, he's just has that right amount of skill and the ability to strike a ball with both feet, to put the ball in the net. And I mean, anyone that's striking at a goal every other game and an assist every third match in his career with us, that's really hard to deal with for defenses, especially in our division.
Absolutely, and you'd think that was, I mean, like we mentioned, the efficiency is key. With offensive output, 20 games, 10 goals, 6 assists. That's some serious output, matched only by one other player that we'll be talking about shortly. But for now, let's jump to the other side of the ball. It'd be really odd if this guy's name didn't pop up in our list of players that City is bringing back, and that is club mainstay Matt Elder between the sticks. He is really the definition of a club guy. Matt is another player that's been with the club since year one. He's really grown to be one of the club's all-time favorite players. And he really does have part of that is because of this super memorable sending off in former coach Adam Pribble's first match ever. When I think that was at VSLT when he came out and destroyed some guy. But John, it seems like there's been a lot of guys who have come in to try to take the number one shirt away from Matt, and they've been really good ones, right? And that doesn't even include the young guys playing on the UPSL team that haven't had a shot yet. What has Matt done to make sure he keeps his firm grip on the lion's share of minutes in goal for City for all these 4 years?
Well, first off, he just pays me, so it's easy decision. No, there'll be a time when we have to announce that Matt has moved on in his life. and playing for City is not on the agenda anymore for him. And that'll be a total gut punch, I think, for a lot of people, not necessarily just in the club, but as you mentioned, kind of outside the club. But he'll never not be around us in some fashion. And clearly he'll never be forgotten. But as far as your question go, the dude just wins games for us. He's had some missteps in net, like any keeper does. And in his City career, some pretty serious ones that we were able to rebound from, but he always follows that up with the game-saving stop or the big momentum-changing save. And he's had his hands full in our conference, that has a long list of really quality strikers that he's faced. You have Jade Johnson, the former Golden Boot winner in the MPSL, Kyle Farrar, Andrew Jenkins out of Duluth, Ayuk Tembe from VSLT, the Olivers, and Chase Wright from the Twin Stars, not to even mention Kareem Darbaki, who's scored quite a few goals against us too. But time and time again, he's lifted the team on his back and allowed the rest of the players to do their job and to bring us the wins and the titles. So I think it truly starts from back to front, and every goalkeeper is going to have mistakes, but it's how they minimize those and how they capitalize on making the big saves that you truly need them to. And with Matt, I mean, look at the game against Duluth this year where he saved the penalty kick right before halftime that he caused.
Yep.
That's a total definition of what I'm talking about here. There will be a day when there is no Matt Elder. But for now, there is a Matt Elder, so we're happy to have him back.
Yeah, and speaking of guys that Matt has fended off as potential successors, we've got Troy Lewegi returning to back him up. And that's not to say that Troy's going to spend the season as a glorified bench warmer. He last year he played, over the course of some couple of years, he's played 12 games for City, including our U.S. Open Cup match against Detroit City, right?
Yep.
In which I'd say he carried himself very admirably against probably the best competition this team has ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So as players like Matt grow up, they get married, they start living lives beyond soccer, it really is always nice to have the next generation primed and ready to take over at a moment's notice, to plug someone in that you're confident in and that you can hand the keys to down the road when Matt decides to hang it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Troy's an interesting goalkeeper because if you look at his college career, he seems to be kind of on paper the forever backup. But it's not to say that he doesn't have the quality to be a starter. At St. Thomas, he was unfortunately behind Aiden Hogan, who's now a professional goalkeeper. At City, he came in and he was in behind Matt and Big Game James, which are also great goalkeepers. But he just continued to be there, and he continued to make impressive performances for the then U23s, now UPSL team. And then last year being elevated to be the number 2. And he came in and played quite a few games, including the one you mentioned in Detroit, where he got scored on a deflection and a penalty. But I thought that there were some very key reactionary saves that for a guy as big as he is, were extremely impressive. To make. And I think that, you only have to look at what he did going into his senior year when another familiar name within the MPSL ranks, Sean Teskey, transferred to St. Thomas from Division I Hartford, and was kind of penciled in as the starter because of his background. And for the first 3 games, Troy sat behind him and then overtook him and became the starter and became, an all-conference type player for St. Thomas. So he's got that fight in him to compete, but he's also the club guy who, when we talk about goalkeepers, we have so many of them across both of our teams. And even if you include segment guys that come in and train with us, there's only really 2 spots, each week for a guy to play on one of our teams. Right.
Yep.
So you need the guys that work well together. And Troy is a great goalkeeper room attitude, and he's starting to push himself into being the heir apparent to being the guy who will take over from a guy like Matt. I honestly would say that it's a very even competition between those 2 guys, and it'll really just depend on matchups and performance as far as who's going to be getting the minutes this year. But it's great because it also affords Matt Elder to have the time off he needs to do his stuff in life as he kind of wanes his career, and allows Troy to continue to step in and get those valuable minutes that he needs.
Well, the next player, John, is one that has been around here and there for a couple years, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been super important. Ever since he came to us, and that guy is central defender Miles Norville. He is a tall, lanky product of Shattuck St. Mary's and Luther College. He came to us during the 2018 U.S. Open Cup run, and he's been in the starting lineup whenever he's healthy ever since. Despite his only setback on the field, which was that controversial handball call in the 2018 regional semifinal, he has been a model of consistent production. What is Miles' biggest strength that he brings to this club?
Miles has like plus level soccer intelligence, and that's kind of spelled out for me across a few areas. I think number one is his first touch is like super quiet, and it always lends itself at his feet in a positive direction that sets him up for his next decision or his final ball, which is something that you just don't see a lot at our level, having those guys that are so clean on the ball, because if they are, they're usually playing at a higher level. That doesn't mean that Miles couldn't play at a higher level, but he's got that deft touch that for a central defender, when things get a little tricky and someone plays a bad back pass from the midfield, or maybe even a goalkeeper throws a ball out, the ball usually is sticking to his foot in a very close proximity.
Yep.
But also I think that positionally he's always in the right place at the right time. And kind of speaking of final balls, he smashes that long ball to the front three, unlike really any player we've ever had. And he can hit with both feet. And that particular skill, I think, is probably the most important thing that he brings to us, because what that does is it helps unlock the defense that are kind of trying to take away our possession-based attacks. They might be playing a little bit higher on us and pressuring us, but because he can accurately hit that ball more times than not, leading to some sort of positive opportunity, he really does give us the line-breaking pass that unlocks a lot of what we see in our division, because what we've seen in our division it's either full on press or full on park the bus, right? There's really nothing in between. I think Duluth last year had a really good in between game where tactically I thought their coach kind of fell down on how to play against us, and they kind of had to pull a rabbit out of the hat with the right type of sub to get the game winner against us when they beat us at home. But I think overall he adds that ability to basically say, if you want to press us, I'm just going to clip the ball to Will Kidd or Nick Hutton, or I'm going to clip it to a guy like Kevin Andrews last year, like guys with pace that have good first touch and awareness, or even an Oliver hitting a channel. He's just going to clip that ball and just watch it sail into a positive space. And it really does give us offense by skipping our midfield whenever we need to.
Yeah. And when we're looking at the depth of this team, that long ball and that soft touch are just two more tools in the toolbox that we can deploy whenever needed. So it's nice to have that tactical flexibility.
Yeah.
For a guy like Miles.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, it's really rare that a person's name gets turned into an action verb, but you have to call it like it is. Kevin Hoof is returning for his 4th season with the Crows, and each of those seasons has seen him really be a model of the type of playing mentality that Minneapolis City has grown to love. So outside of his name being shouted from the stands after one of his 50-50 tackles, and the fact that he's really a case study as to why you want to maybe accept why you want to accept an invite into the Stagman's organization if you don't make the city roster. How does a player like Kevin fit in this year? Because similarly to AO, I think we'll talk about Charlie in a little bit. This is a guy that can play a number of places on the field and provides a little bit of flexibility for the coach.
You got hoofed. Sorry, have to do it. Whenever I talk about Kevin, you have to do it. Kevin's just a solid soccer player who I can honestly say I'm not sure what his biggest strength is outside of the crunching tackle, clearly, because he does so many things well. And I can see why through his playing career, coaches were so high on him, because he has the ability to play across, I think I counted 6 positions, and probably a 7th if we listen to him about trying to play up top. which will never happen, Kevin, if you're listening to this. And if you're not listening to this, Keith, you're definitely listening to this. You can tell Kevin at the dinner table he's never playing striker. But he's just so valuable to us because he can be very, we can adapt our tactics and how we use Kevin, and he's dependable no matter what the coaching staff needs. And yes, he's not he's no longer a student athlete and likely not in his best shape anymore. And that's not a slight on him. It's just what happens to guys that go from being workout junkies because you have to having a day job and not having to be workout junkies. They just get out of shape quicker. But that doesn't matter because with Kevin, he brings his A game like AO kind of always, and he fights like hell, and he keeps his name in the 18 game day sheet because of all of that, because you never know what you're going to need in whether the game plan dictates that Kevin starts or he comes off the bench. He's always in it for some reason. And I want to bring the Twin Stars game away last year up for that reason. He wasn't in the starting 11 because we kind of had a cohesion of Charlie, Max Stiegwardt, and Luke Hawkinson kind of in doing well for us. And you don't want to necessarily as a coach cool down the heater just to get another guy playing time, but also you want to make sure you're getting guys in so that they can get those game minutes together. The sub of Kevin for Charlie at halftime was the absolute reason why we won the game, not only because Kevin scored the game-winning goal, but because of the crunching tackles, the composure in the middle on the ball and keeping possession and cooling down a lot of the fireworks that happen against a team like the Twin Stars. And I think that just speaks for who Kevin is. He can score a goal for you. He can crush a guy in tackles. I think he killed a guy in the first 2 seconds of the second half on a totally clean challenge that you could hear up in the stands. It was like, and then all of a sudden you just hear someone go, "You got hoofed." As this poor guy is writhing in pain on the ground. But anyways, that just speaks to the kind of player that Kevin is. He's so valuable, but he doesn't jump out off of the paper at you as oh my God, he's probably one of the best 5 players we have. He's just gonna always be there and do his thing.
Yeah. If production and output is a measurement of success, the next player really has crossed off pretty much everything he has needed to do in his soccer career thus far. We're talking about former Luther All-American, both on the field and in the classroom, Aiden O'Driscoll. He has just churned out complete performances since joining City, and they all seem to come when the club really needs them out of central midfield. Aiden is a former U23 call-up. He's got 2 goals and assists over 6 games played with the NPSL squad near the end of last year, or second half of last season. And to the untrained ear, those aren't stats that jump out at you. But a guy like Aiden, especially, or I shouldn't say a guy like Aiden, last year Aiden specifically showed up in the midfield and provided some stability when Minneapolis City needed it most. Explain to the folks, John, what really is in between the lines for a player like Aiden.
We say things like high soccer IQ for a lot of players, but I think Aiden actually kind of wrote that IQ test. I think former City player Sigu Chroma called him the Irish Zidane, which is, yeah, it's it actually makes sense because he never looks like he's working super hard because he doesn't have to. He's just exactly where he needs to be always, and that's on both sides of the ball. And this trait is a trait that players at the highest level really struggle to have. And as a result, he's able to expel his maximum energy when he needs it most. And he's really good at picking out those times when he needs to do it. He just never looks tired. And when he's on the ball though, he's a lot like former Curl Martin Brown Jr. Super smooth, has the ability to play passes into channels that look closed. And that's just next level. It's not just IQ thing. It's execution. In case in point, was the 1-2 that he played with Eli Goldman, kind of threading the needle that set up the decisive goal in our match last season against Twin Stars, which I think was when we cemented the fact that we're going to win a back-to-back title because we really needed that win. And he came on in that game in the second half and completely changed it. He and Eli both together, I think you can say 1A, 1B for why we succeeded in that. But it was just a true Aiden O'Driscoll performance. He played the number 10 role, which typically wasn't his position throughout his soccer career. He's more of a straight central midfielder that's more box to box, but he played more advanced, and he just showed you can really put him anywhere in the midfield, and he's an asset.
Yeah, so far the guys that we've talked about have been City staples up to now, guys that you would almost be shocked to not see on a City roster. But the next player is a young guy who hopefully one day can be counted on as a no-brainer inclusion into the team. But for now, we're still waiting for his breakthrough moment. I'm talking about Matt Murakami. He has been with the Crow organization since 2018, featuring both on the U23 squad and the NPSL team. And in that time, he's featured in only 10 games. But they were always games, I would say, in which he was almost desperately needed, including the trip to Detroit, right?
Right, exactly.
What about Matt gets the coaching staff excited? And is this the year that he features more heavily for the Crows?
Actually, I'll kind of touch to some of your point when you were kind of introducing Matt, and I'll talk a little bit about the breakthrough moment I think he did have. But to answer your question, simple enough, it's his versatility. He goes by Mookie, which is what his college bros at Gustavus call him, which I'm sure he really loves to still be called as an adult. But he's one of those players like Chuck or Hoof or, at a higher level, James Milner. Not to say that that Matt's boring James Milner. If you don't follow boring James Milner on Twitter, get a life, because you should be. But you need them on your team. You need a right back today, done. You need a center mid today or a winger, done. And he fights like hell, like a lot of these guys do. And where I go back to where I think his breakout for performance actually already came, it was last year in Detroit, when he had to play right back versus a team who you could literally tell trained based off of our game tape on the fact that we have a desire to get both of our fullbacks high. So what they did was, for the first half, they picked on they probably picked on Charlie Adams at right back the most. But then for the second half, they picked on Matt. And basically what they were doing was they would overload a weak side and basically do what we tried to do against teams in our division, but they were just very successful at doing it against us. So what happened was that Matt was constantly on the back foot for wave after wave of attack. And since we didn't have Zuhair and Abdallah Ba, who obviously would have gotten up and back and basically done what they trained to counter against us, Matt had to step in and took the challenge completely on the chin and went all in against really good players. And I would say, like, if you go back and you look at that game, he was constantly facing 2-on-1, 3-on-1s pretty much the entire game when the ball was on his side. And I thought he did great. And those are the types of things that will get him more playing time and will feature him into the squad more. And he'll just continue to elevate himself into being more of a regular player for us. Across multiple positions, but I really do think that he's a lot like Charlie Adams, where he was a college central midfielder, defensive central midfielder, and that's how he kind of came into us with the U23s when he came into the trial process. But I think he's best suited as an outside defender. And the other thing is, he drives 55 minutes each way. Currently, because of living outside of the cities for work, to train at 9 p.m. at night and then have to do it again at 11 o'clock at night to go back and then go to work the next day, which really means he loves being a part of this. And he has that dedication to make the sacrifice that most people wouldn't do, to travel to be part of this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Our next player announcement is a guy that burst onto the scene last year and looks to, for the time being, be the guy on our back line, as Jonah Garcia. Jonah was honored as the People Pitch's official-unofficial team MVP, having catapulted himself from an open trial flyer to the top of the depth chart with his hard work and his consistent play. We've talked about Jonah before a couple of times, how he scored the game winner in his first ever start versus Dakota at home, how he locked down some very talented strikers all year, how he quickly became a vocal leader on this team. What can you add to this, John?
Well, I think that from that introduction, we need to get him on the show. I think is probably one of the things
we've had. Oh, that's right. We haven't had him on the show. We've only interviewed him.
We've interviewed him, but I think it's time we bring him on here as we lead into the season. But I think the first thing that really jumps out for me to answer your question on, what can he add to this? I think it's first and foremost avoiding the sophomore slump. Not to say that I've seen it in training but guys fall into that trap easily. He's not that type of guy, but it could always be a thing. But definitely not that guy at all. And will, in my opinion, only elevate now that he's been with us in our system and had a year under his belt. I think a specific thing, I'd like to see from him is to elevate his distribution out of the back beyond the easy passes. A lot like what we talked about with Miles, like the ability to get balls into the next more advanced levels that are a bit more difficult and kind of completing those at a higher rate. We started to see a little bit of that last year. I think the Twin Stars away game, I thought he was constantly clipping balls up top to Will Kidd and they were successful. I'd like to see more of that, not just to play like a kick and run type style, but when it's on, be willing to at least try it and start to then minimize the incompletion rate of those as the season moves on. But it's just hard. That's a hard thing to do. But if he can add that to his game, he will definitely not get screwed this year by the voting for all conference. Like he definitely deserved it last year. And, from the shape he's in right now, and then the hunger he has to play and to get the season started right now in preseason it's next level for us. I don't think I've seen a guy come in this prepared to play than I've seen Jonah right now. Now here's the downside. Making a stupid decision to play with FC Minnesota in the U.S. Open Cup 2 years ago, he was sent off for a tactical foul, so he's going to be missing our Open Cup game because he has to sit out his next game. So
that carries over?
It carries over, yeah. So, I mean, realistically speaking, I've played in the U.S. Open Cup. If I got sent off in like 2005, I would have to sit out a game in 2020. So it was funny too because as soon as we got into the tournament, it was like immediate. If Jonah Garcia's on your team, you have to sit out the first game. We're like, Jesus Christ, chill, guys. Like, we didn't put our roster out yet. We're like, they're that on it because they don't want players to play. So I give him shit all the time because as we're preparing for the some of the guys that were in the mix for the Open Cup, he's always on the second team, and I always make fun of him because of it. Like, sweet decision to play for those boners. But anyways, yeah, super happy to have Jonah back.
Every year, John, there's a guy that we are probably disproportionately excited about before the start of the season, and usually they don't pan out. But luckily this year it's the guy who has already proven himself with Minneapolis City, and personally I'm just excited to see more. Eli Goldman is back. He have 4 goals across 8 games in his City career. He was our 2019 Young Player of the Year, and after a year playing at the University of New Hampshire, there is really nowhere for Eli to go but up. What does the ceiling look like for Eli, and is this the year that our preseason player excitement is rewarded?
Well, before I answer that question, knowing who's on the roster, I actually have I think I'm going to fall into the trap potentially of some players that you don't know about yet. That will be coming soon.
No.
Which I hope not. Fingers crossed.
Don't do it.
Fingers crossed. But as far as Eli's concerned, all the praise is warranted. He's just a fantastic offensive player, whether it's out wide, up top, or in the number 10 role, which I feel is probably his best position. He plays with a total fuck you attitude, which I love. I mean, he cares none about who he's facing and where he's playing. And you look at my Twitter feed, I posted the post game interview of him this week when we played against Med City and we were going into the Detroit game, and he basically said, he's like, yeah, I don't really know much about who we're playing, but I hear they get 6,000 fans and that's awesome. Like he was going into probably one of the biggest soccer experiences of his younger career, and he was like, I don't fucking care. He's like, I'm just gonna go out and play. And that attitude, I think he just goes out and regularly performs. And last year, our team's success really laid on his shoulders at the end of the season as a 19-year-old. And he didn't shudder the responsibility. He actually strived for more responsibility and was that vocal guy who demanded the ball and was getting on teammates to up their level. Specifically in that Detroit City game, I thought he played great against some very, very 2 guys who were former MLS draft picks. and was just like, I don't care, I'm going into this. He could be the type of player that I think plays at the next level if he continues to actually, trust the process, whether it be the D1 process. But I also think it includes staying in an environment for him in the summer like ours that will afford him the ability to be successful. The worst thing I think that can happen to him is if all of these great things are stacking on top of themselves, and then he gets into an environment. I know New Hampshire is not that environment, but I'm saying, like, if he were to move to a USL2 team or potentially something in the MPSL that's closer to New Hampshire, to stay closer to school, I just hesitate to be fully behind that with a player like Eli, because I think he needs to be not the guy who has to fight like hell for playing time in his growth process. Yes, he has to compete to get playing time within a lot of the talented players we have. But this is a comfortable area for him because he could easily drop down, or not I don't want to say drop down. He easily parallel drop to play with the UPSL team. If for some reason he gets injured or he's not getting game minutes, and he wants to do that. So I just don't want his growth to be stunted because of a decision made by, say, a college coach.
We've seen it happen a number of times with a couple different City players that have been young with a ton of potential, that they, instead of coming back to play every game here, they sit on the bench in some southern state.
Bumblefuck Florida, in like 95-degree humidity. And
exactly, and it just stunts them. So
I just hope it doesn't happen with a guy like Eli, and his coaching staff at New Hampshire is great. And, like this year, Rory O'Driscoll's decided to do that, to stay in closer to school. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens with Eli, where they make that recommendation more, or if maybe next year, depending upon what happens with Rory, maybe he comes back. So I just don't want, I hate to see it happen, but you never know. It might not happen, but super excited for Eli to be back. Great hair, white teeth, just a model performer on and off the field.
We're also going to see the return of our 2019 breakout player of the year, and that's Zahir Alabasi. Last year, we saw this defender transformed from an uncoached player with a lot of raw talent to a real contributor on both sides of the ball that fits really well in our system. How will Z look to build on last year's success?
Well, he had off-season ankle surgery, which I think has slowed his preseason a bit, but he's putting in the work. Actually, I've been working kind of one-on-one with him on kind of getting his touch back, while the other guys are working on more contact-related things. But he's, we worked for a month now, and I think he last week was his first week back where he was like full contact, and I think he's getting there. I think once he gets fully fit, he adds that dimension. We only really had throughout our City life cycle over the past 4 previous seasons, and a player like Abdallah Ba, who with that willingness to really get forward in the attack, but also perform that role. It's really hard to do because you have to also be a defender, and to keep that intensity up on both sides of the ball for 90 minutes. It's something that makes Zahir really unique. And I think that it's really an indicator of he's found his soccer home with us, and that we provide him with the things that he didn't get at his previous stops along the way to joining us. And you can kind of really see that when he puts the City shirt on at training or at matches. He just looks like he's having fun, and it's fun for him. And when he's having fun, he's a very high performer. Maybe one of the highest performers that we've seen at the position. I would love to see him get on the score sheet more maybe this year, because last year he had quite a few opportunities where he was in position to do so but didn't convert. And if we can get a goal scoring outside defender, like a regular goal scoring outside defender, mixed with all of the other talent we have in front of him, it's going to be pretty serious for other teams to have to defend. But he, like Jonah, is a player that I thought should have been in discussion for some postseason honors last year. I think if he adds that attacking piece to his game, that element that he's can add to his already impressive skill sets, I think he'll definitely get the recognition. And I think as an outside defender, I think he's finally found a position that he feels at home at. And I think no other team or manager tried him there, and they should have. Newsflash.
Yeah. Next up, another outside defender. now kind of transitioning to a different position, Charlie Adams. He's really the club's Swiss Army knife. He has seen success both defensive wings as well as deep sitting midfielder. 2 goals, 3 assists over 41 games. Charlie has been one of the will be one of the more veteran members of the team this season. He has been a mainstay since the 2018 U.S. Open Cup campaign, and it's always great to see Charlie back with the team.
What you didn't mention is his take no shit attitude. I mean, he's one of the nicest guys off the pitch, but a total bastard on it. And we need players like that, considering that we're in Minnesota. We don't need a lot of Minnesota nice players.
He learned that back in England when he was playing for Coxswabble, or what was it? What was that?
Yeah, I forget what it is, but whenever I forget the name, but I should write it down and like tattoo it on my body because it's that good. It's like the Shrimpers or something like that.
Yeah.
But he has that willingness to lay a guy out for the good of the team and take the booking when we really need it. And then on the flip side, know how to still fight like hell on that yellow card without getting sent off, which pretty much was my MO throughout my whole entire soccer career. I got a lot of yellow cards, but was able to talk my way into the referee's pocket a little bit to let him know, I'm on his side, but also be able to play on that yellow card and maybe get a few more kicks in before, and get that stern warning where most players would get the immediate second yellow. But when he's on the ball, you can pretty much guarantee that Charlie's never going to give it up. I think his decision making on the ball is fantastic. Once he has it, he throws out the chazzle dazzle step over. But all of that is, it allows him, to be in the middle situationally, he has the right amount of athletic ability to be on the outside. And I think that's a matchup problem, both spots for our opponents. And he can really be used like a lot of the guys we've talked about. If there's a recurring theme that we have here is not a whole lot of guys that are really set on one position, but a lot of guys that can play across a couple different So anyways, also the Kennedy hair, super impressive.
Super impressive. So good. No attacker has been more of a giant killer over the last 2 years than Justin Oliver. He also might be pound for pound and game for game the most prolific of all our players. It's kind of tied between Justin and Nick. He has racked up 9 goals and 7 assists in 17 games. I would say the biggest of which were the title clinching matches against Duluth. What does a team do when they're staring down a Justin, Hutton, and Will on the attack?
Well, plain and simple, it's the butthole pucker. I mean, last year we were really down on Justin for large parts of the season because his final decision making at times was not really.
I didn't even think about that. That like last year he didn't score a goal for the first 4 games or something like that.
He just was forcing things in there. He was making incorrect decisions. However, like any true attacker, he didn't let it faze him, and he came out on as we know. Huge at the end of the season, scoring some really big goals for us. Got brought down in the box against Detroit City, no call, which really would have changed the tide of the game. I mean, he's logged a lot of miles in this league, and he just knows how to be successful. And if we can get him finding the back of the net early this season, it's kind of a lookout scenario for the rest of the league.
Yeah. And another thing that I like about him is he is also a huge asshole on the field. More like Chuck. Every midfield needs its calm, collected general who can really pull those strings and put the ball exactly where it needs to be. And ours is Samuel Ruiz Plaza. Even with a City career that's been marred by injury, Samo has been a welcome sight every time he hits the pitch. If this is the year that he can stay healthy, what effect is that going to have on the midfield and on the team as a whole, John?
Well, right. He ruptured his spleen and broke his back.
Yeah.
And tore a groin. Jesus Christ. I think it's funny that you say that because he and I have talked a lot in the past few weeks, as we started our preseason. And I think he's making the concerted effort to limit his soccer, and he's kind of understanding, how he should be focusing on Minneapolis City because we can get the most out of it. And that should help. Most importantly for him, it's to understand how to play or how to best play his role in the attacking third as a central midfielder. In school at Messiah, he racked up wins and in the deeper midfield role. And I think he also racked up touches and 5-yard passes along the way, which is great. However, I think he's best suited having, less defensive responsibility and more the freedom to use his flair and his passing vision to really go at guys when he can pin his ears back and really terrorize a defense and then connect with the front three better. I just cross my fingers that he trusts the process this year and stays out of the training room and logs more minutes because we know what we can get out of him, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. Next up is a player that I'm going to admit has flown under the radar for me. Noah Sen started his time with City at the U23 squad, but he worked his way into the lineup by the end of last season. He's stealthily steady with lots of upside that I think is yet to be revealed. What do you see in Noah, John, and how will the club be looking for him to contribute this year?
Well, I think you nailed it. I think Noah still has some room to grow, and that's not a slight on a player that already has this fantastic soccer foundation. He plays my old position as a 6, and you can ask guys like Steve on how hard I am on those guys. But he has everything you want in a deep central player, along with his consistency to kind of keep the ball and to snuff out attacks. For him this season, I think he really needs to add the off the ball piece to his game. From what we saw last summer, I think it's that communication piece and his orchestration ability, feeling comfortable to boss players around, boss his friends around, and to get them in the right places on and off the ball. I think that'll be really key for him when he gets on in the field. He's kind of a quiet guy, but I think if he can do that, it'll only unlock another level for him. I also like the fact that he has some size. He's a sneaky 6 foot plus. And we haven't really had a tall ball winner in the middle of the field outside of a few cameo appearances, from guys like Shea Bottom. So having that guy who can win in the air from a cross or a punt will set us up nicely in terms of what the division play with a lot of the long ball we see. Having that guy who can win a header or collect a ball out of the air and then spark an attack, I think would be super advantageous for us and for him to get more playing time.
Absolutely. Next up, and I guess last in our roundup before we get to our guest, is a guy that arguably could be named Mr. Minneapolis City. This is second. He's second all-time in minutes played with 3,868. First in goals scored. First in assists. Will Kidd has been with the club since day one, and he has grown every year from the college freshman into the team leader. But he has always been an influential force on the pitch. What more can you say about Will, John, except that, like AO, like Matt Elder, it is going to be a strange, sad day when we see a Minneapolis City squad without him on it?
Well, first off, Will doesn't say a whole lot, so he could easily, in a training environment, just kind of go unnoticed until the ball's rolled out. But you're right. It'll be totally weird one day when Will is no longer with us. But I feel that really only a job change for him we'll see him move away from us in the next handful of years while he's still kind of in his prime playing for City. There's really not much more you can say about Will other than you're going to get the same type of player that we've always seen and one that added some more grit and leadership to his game the past 2 summers. We had him on the show and he told us he really wanted to add that to his skill set, going into his senior year at St. Thomas to really be a leader. But you could really see the different type of fire out of him last summer that we really needed. And I think we'll continue to need. I mean, he's always going to score goals, draw fouls, and play good defense as an attacking player. But if there's anything that I would like to see from him, it's his willingness to be that consistent second and third runner off the ball. At our level, Nate, the first runner is absolutely expected, and most teams never even try or even look for the second option. But if you can do that successfully, like Detroit did versus us and does in general, you can see how devastating it can be to a defense, and it creates so many chances. It literally is a game killer for teams that do it. They just kill the game out and score a bunch of goals. Here, more than most, he's that willing player to make that secondary option for a guy on the ball. But I feel like we just need to add it in a little bit more, and that when we're adding more attacking talent around a guy like Will, him being the willing guy to lull a defense to sleep and then hit that run when we absolutely need it every single time, or vary his runs consistently, I think will make him even more special.
And finally, we've got our guest tonight, a guy that has been with the team on and off since the beginning, someone who made up one half of, in my opinion, the best midfield combination I have seen with Minneapolis City. A guy who has scored not one, but two goal of the year worthy bangers from deep downtown. I'm talking City midfielder Max Stiegwardt. In 24 games with City, Max has scored 9 goals, tallied 5 assists, and he returns this year as a co-captain. Max, welcome back to the podcast, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nate, thanks for having me, man. Really excited to be part of this again. It's whatever I can do that's involved with City is always a great time.
So
Nice.
Max, let's first start off by talking a little bit about your appointment to co-captain with AO. This is something that's a first for us to kind of deploy 2 armbands. And seeing that you've been in and out with us since the beginning, what does it mean to you to be nominated as a captain of the club, and what do you feel you did to convince Matt to give you that honor of wearing the segment on your arm?
Yeah, it's something Matt approached me about earlier this fall, and I was honored that's the very first emotion I feel, and I still feel to this day. It's an honor to represent such a big thing, especially something that's growing and to be a part of from the very beginning. But it's also, it's kind of not necessarily a dream, but it's also, coming into a team and fitting right in with the guys and whatever it might be in the last couple of years, just feeling a part of it and feeling like you have a voice in the team and having guys look up to you. It's definitely a good gig to get and to have. But also, learning from a guy like AO over the last couple of years definitely put me in the right place to lead guys.
And it's your hometown team, so it's like, technically, you weren't born in Minneapolis, but we'll call it your hometown team.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lived here enough years to be considered a Minnesotan.
To call it home. Yeah, it's where you eat and shit. So there you go.
Exactly.
So I want to take things away from City for a brief moment. So we've talked about and discussed your soccer journey on the show a few times. You played at a high level since you were 14, and now you're post college. And there was a desire to test your game at higher levels. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that process. The trial experiences you went on last summer that maybe didn't work out, obviously, seeing that you're back with us, and not to put any negativity on this at all, but I think it's important for listeners of our show and just soccer fans at our level to understand what it really is and was like for a player like you, and then kind of touching on the importance of having a home like Minneapolis City to come back to while you're still pushing to play at a high level and potentially, continue to maybe play at a next level, and how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to begin, I think whatever levels of, aspiration guys have at playing at, I think the number one the number one goal is always going to be, how bad do you want to get there? And what are your chances of actually getting there? And I think it's something, my girlfriend was a really big part of kind of helping me see the big picture in the long run, because, there is a lot of life after soccer as well. And having USL experiences and European experiences in my past, I think those all set me up to be kind of the best person all around I can be. So, the level at, once you go from NPSL to USL to training with MLS teams to overseas, whatever it might be, it's always just getting higher and higher and higher. And, the mistakes and all those little things, time on the ball, spacing. I think spacing is one of the biggest ones guys don't really realize, because it's, how close are you to the guy next to you? And, every inch literally does matter. And it's something coaches look at really, really, really intensely, especially in video. But I think, all those factors coming together, and having a couple USL offers and just realizing, that's, it's not something I want to do entirely. I think Minneapolis City gives me the perfect opportunity to, be a part of something big, still be able to compete at a high level, but also kind of, look at life in a broader area as well. I think guys, you have guys on the team that have a family. You have guys on the team, that they work 9 to 5, and they are living their lives, but it's not that commitment of, it's just soccer. It's just, I think a great example is one of my really good friends lives out east. He recently got married. He was playing with New York City, then got traded out on the West Coast to Seattle Sounders. And then, it was kind of, his life was kind of all over the place. And his wife was actually not the happiest around, as you can imagine. You just never know where your life is going to go. So I think being able to balance everything out and having, just a broad aspect of just life in general, kind of brings out the best in Minneapolis City. Well, as well as playing at a really high level. The fans and the coaches all know, that Detroit game was something amazing to be a part of.
So tell us a little bit about your time in Italy last summer. For fans of the show that don't know, you went over to trial with a Serie B team. Tell us a little bit more about that, and and what you saw going from the domestic game. You had gone into some environments at a younger age, but this was more first team type experience that you went into. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think the number one thing that kind of hit me the most was that there's always guys that are younger than you, that are going to be like 16, 17, that are already in the club, that can do the same thing you can do or better. And they're so valuable. I think, like I said, the level at just the playing level at that environment, and just seeing how bought in everyone is, how fit everyone comes to practice, how, just in general,
the intensity of it.
Yeah. Just the professionalism in the atmosphere, whether it's in the training room, whether it's in the locker room. You see guys, and it's a real legit professional attitude, and these are guys some guys are 16, some guys are 30. Age isn't really a thing when you're there. It's kind of just you're bought into one specific goal, and that's making it. And for some guys, that's, you have to make it to survive. I saw, 16-year-olds that were on a first team contract that were literally, they had their grandmothers and their moms and their dads living with them, and they were the ones producing.
The provider, yeah.
Exactly. So, it's a much different environment and way of life than we're used to here in the States, for sure. I think U16 here, a lot of guys, for the most part, really have it going for them. They're looking to play college. They're looking, they probably go to high school. They have a life outside of soccer, and, it's kind of just like not really a hobby. It is intense, of course, but it's not, it's not do or die as it is for some guys.
Yeah.
And I think,
well, not to get into the kind of the politics of it all, but like here in America, if you're a U16 player, chances are you've got enough money to have put you in that position to be noticed year after year after year after year,
Yep.
right? Whereas, like you mentioned over there, you might be the only thing that's keeping your family
absolutely.
fed.
And I think
And
when
go
you
ahead.
see, when you see that, it hits you really hard, because it's guys are going into every tackle, and you can just tell by how they're training, how their attitude is on life. It's do or die for them.
It's something that John has talked about a couple times, when he talks a little bit about his experience back in Germany too, is that, and you're putting a different spin on it, but when you go into these clubs for trial, when you show up as kind of the outsider, nobody's there to put their arm around you and make friends with you.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They're there looking at you like you're going to take their
Yep.
job. And the last thing they want is to let you do that.
Absolutely. It's kind of like a respect earned kind of thing. Once you show that you can keep up with them and or you can do better than them, that's kind of when it's like, okay, come eat with us. It's like, obviously it's not that intense, but that's a good way of I think putting it out there.
Yeah. So obviously, with this announcement, you are a member of the Murder again this summer. Can you tell us a little bit about where you feel the club and both teams currently are, whether it's the NPSL or the UPSL team, where they currently are in their development? leading into the season, leading into the U.S. Open Cup. As you know, we're probably in the minority of teams at our level that are actually together and currently training together.
Yeah, this is a conversation I had with Matt a while ago. I think having such a broad, like, great base of talent from your hometown, gives it's just that much better because, like you said, guys are putting in together sessions in the winter. Guys are hanging out outside of just practice. It's a culture. It's a, being part of Minneapolis City. A lot of guys, I've seen baby pictures where their babies are wearing pajamas. I've seen guys get customized socks, shirts, whatever it might be. I'm not gonna throw any names out there, but I think we all know who those guys are. But it's a great time, absolutely. But a lot of NPSL teams, even USL teams, rely so heavily on college guys that it kind of just gets into this. I'm only there for a month or two in the summer to train at a high level to stay fit for college. So you don't get that like family environment that you do with a team like this. I know we had a interview about this last year, but being able to play with guys like Luke Hawkinson and Kevin Hoof again, when I was able to grow up with them, it's kind of a full circle type of deal. You don't see that really anywhere, I don't think. I mean, I have yet to hear that from other guys that I played college with or that are playing pro now that get to play with guys that they grew up playing with. It's something special that it really just is unique.
With the U.S. Open Cup being the team's next test, and it really is going to be your first experience playing in the tournament, a club can lose sight of the fact that there is going to be a league to play in after that and to join, if not to fight to be the first three-peat winner like we will. Is the preseason that has started, are you guys keeping an eye on what you need to accomplish for league play, or is it like 100% preparing for FC Chicago Real United, and then after that is done, you're going to start ramping up for the NPSL and UPSL seasons?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I know guys that are a little bit older, maybe that aren't in shape yet. It's kind of like, hey, like, you don't have to kill yourself for that very first game, right? There is a full season after that. But then you have a lot of young guys that we have here that I think we have a really good group of guys that finished college in the last year or two, that are fit, that are looking to get on the field and play right away. But I would say our main focus is that game right away. I think guys want to go out there, they want to compete, they want to show that there is a lot of talent in the North, and they, beating a USL2 team is a big accomplishment. So I think that's where the focus is right now. I think sessions as they go into February and March will be dictated around there. Therefore, when that day comes, the guys will be prepared.
We don't talk about it too much on the show because I know John likes to keep these things a little bit under wraps, but I have personally been to a couple of these secret sessions, knowing that Minneapolis City has trained against a team like Minnesota United, against the second team of Minnesota United. Do you feel that, and this returning team is rife with that experience, do you feel that we've got what it takes to push past Chicago and maybe even give Forward Madison a run for their money?
Absolutely. I've had this conversation with guys, and whoever ends up going to that Chicago game, it is FIFA rules, so only 18 can go, or 18 can be dressed. But I think there is no lesser expectation than beating Chicago and then also making a statement and beating Forward Madison.
God, how crazy would that be?
That'd be fun. So taking off my sporting director hat for a moment and putting on my podcast show hat, what are some things the club's done this year to get better as an organization that sticks out to you as a player and now a captain?
I think just the organization from Dan himself, kind of reaching out to guys and, being like, hey, what do you guys need individually? I think a lot of, in the earlier years, focus was, hey, like, once guys get here, like, we'll figure it out then. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but I think
it's just where we were, really.
Yeah. And now it's more of like hey, we have guys here, we have coaches and staff volunteering and available to make something out of it. So let's do the best we can to get started now. So I think Dan's doing an amazing job of going out of his way to get extra sessions for guys, to get guys fit, to get guys in the gym, whatever it might be, just to be ready for that game or for the season in general.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me is the depth that we've created with the ability to have all of the UPSL players rostered on the MPSL team. I think that was one of the things that sticks out to me, that as an organization we thought we inquired about to see if it was possible, first and foremost. But once we did, then now we have that player pool where it really is creating that job interview atmosphere when we go into training. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of gives the best of both worlds too, because it pushes the UPSL guys push the MPSL guys. But then, I don't want to call myself old. I'm only 22, but you have guys that are 18, 19 that are either going into college or that are in college that are coming back, and they're going to be really fit guys. But, it allows for rotations in games, right? It allows myself not to have to maybe play like a Friday, Monday or Friday, Wednesday type of game and kind of rest up the legs for whoever it might be, So I'm not just saying it just me, myself, but, for anyone in general, it just allows for such great rotation and such different plans of attack and defend with having so many guys rostered. It really just gives endless opportunities and options.
Max, it is the 5th anniversary of as the club already. I can't believe that we've been doing this for that long. And outside of one of the whole way, what is your favorite story or your fondest memory of being part of the club so far?
Ooh, that's a tough question. It's been nothing but good years for sure. But I think my fondest memory is definitely maybe it might be either going to Detroit with 13, 14 guys. Just the attitude and the just the resiliency of the guys to commit to go and to make that game happen is very understated for sure. But if not that, then it's definitely I think the season I came back where we went undefeated in the MPSL North, and just sharing that moment with guys and lifting multiple trophies.
So many trophies.
So switching gears a bit to this upcoming season, you obviously know who's on the roster because you've been training with them. Without naming any names, what are you most excited for this summer, and where do you really see this team going?
Yeah, I think the most excitement for me personally is just to have so many guys on the roster for sure. It brings in so many different levels of talent from all over. You have guys reaching out that haven't reached out before. You have us reaching out to guys that haven't been here before. You have new faces. You have similar faces. So I think it's just getting everyone into a session and having that just broader, talent pool of guys and creating an atmosphere, creating a family. So I think that's what I'm most looking forward to, definitely. But yeah, honestly, I think that's definitely the mindset right now for the summer, is just having such a talented group of guys and being able to play with them still. And, even after college, a lot of guys don't get to do that, which is definitely a lucky feeling.
Is it getting to the point where, I think for the past couple of years, you've seen that players have wanted to play with Minneapolis City for the high level, right? For the name recognition or for just to challenge themselves, things like that. But is it getting to the point where we're starting to get players who are coming to Minneapolis City, obviously because they're high level players, but they're looking for a different environment, like an environment that's a little more personally rewarding, as well as, I guess, professionally or physically rewarding?
Kind of like tailor made for what they need in their soccer journey, I guess is probably what you're asking, Nate.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
the guys that are excited to join the team, not just because of the high level of play, but because of the brotherhood.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to give you a quick little story, I mean, I've had guys from college reach out to me and say like, hey, like, can I play with Minneapolis City this summer? Like, who do I need to get in contact with? Just because they see so many things going on Instagram, on Twitter, on the internet, whatever it might be. I think Minneapolis City has a really good balance of that professional environment in the soccer world, but then they do such a good job in the social media aspects, whether it's the podcast, the Twitter page, the Instagram, of kind of giving guys exposure. And I mean, a guy like John, a guy like Matt. They have a guy like Adam. Absolutely, just the networking they have done, whether it's throughout Minneapolis or in the region or even in the country, to reach out to coaches and say, hey, like, your player is doing really, really well with us or whatever it might be. It's definitely giving a lot of guys more exposure than they had in the past, but it's also definitely making some noise, and it's getting guys outside of the state saying, hey, like, what do I need to do to play there this summer?
Move here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Move
Get
here.
a job.
Yeah, get a job, kid.
Exactly.
Well, Max, let's move on to the game of the night. We've had lots of games on the show over our 4 years, but our newest game is one that we like to call Ask John Anything. So here's how this works. You can ask John 2 questions about anything. It could be soccer related. It could be something like, which of his kids does he love more? And if he answers both of them, the game is over. However, if he pleads the fifth on any question, he has to answer your next one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It
So the
does.
idea would be to ask him some uncomfortable questions with an extremely uncomfortable question in your back pocket for when he says, I can't answer that.
Okay. And what's the level of uncomfortability we can go here?
I mean, seeing this is our Andy Lordy was our first pass at this.
He had some real soft ones.
Yeah, he had some pretty soft ones. But I guess I would say, like, you can take the gloves off, I guess. I mean, it's a new game for us, so we got to test the waters.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go all out from the beginning.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. I guess my number one question is going to be, we'll make it awkward, potentially, if your wife listens in. What's your body count?
Oh, my body
yes.
count. She doesn't listen, so that's good. Body count. Let's see here. I got to do a little bit of math. Probably some nights in Germany I don't remember.
Carry the one.
Carry the one. I'd probably have to say probably like 22, give or take.
Wow.
I mean, there was a time in my life where I know it's a shocker to hear, I was a little bit of a loose cannon. But I'd have to say in my 39 years of being on this earth, probably around 20, but not more than 25.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Question 2. That was an easy one.
Question 2. All right. I guess since everyone you work with in city doesn't really know what you do with your foreign company, I'm going to make it kind of awkward. Some people don't like to ask this question or answer this question, I guess. How much do you make salary-wise?
Oh, geez. That's okay. So now that this is the difficult part for me. Is that pre-tax? Is that including performance bonus? Or is it just like standard salary?
Let's go the whole thing.
The whole
After
thing.
everything.
Net
Does that include
or gross?
Does that include?
Let's go gross.
Does it include side hustle? Because there's side hustle involved too with like coaching some soccer stuff.
Or is it? Let's throw it all in.
I think I'm gonna have to plead the fifth on this one.
Ooh.
Just because of the fact that I don't want to embarrass anyone. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's respectable.
No, I'm gonna plead the fifth to keep it civil with the folks that I work with.
All right.
Which means that I gotta answer the next one.
Ooh, I was only expecting 2 questions. Okay.
Curveball.
I did well.
Yeah, you did well. You did well.
We'll make this last one easy. We'll go with, what is your fondest Minneapolis City memory?
My fondest Minneapolis City memory to date definitely has to be the first ever game in which I coached Minneapolis City, and that was the 2018 U.S. Open Cup game. A lot of new faces, a lot of guys that latched on to us. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of guys that latched on to us that are now kind of staples in the club. Guys like Chuck, Whitney, Martin, a lot of those guys, but also guys that we had in there like Trey, and then you throw in guys like Timmy who were involved in that. So some club legends in there, and I think really it was the first time for me to really latch on to coaching at a higher level than I had. And to take the experience I had from playing in the tournament and how to build a team that's tournament specific. I really enjoyed that. And I think from that, I think I also potentially gained some respect from some of the players that just looked at me as the guy who helped start the club, and more as this is how my soccer methodology is and what I feel it will make players successful. And then we won, so that it worked. And then we got the fucking boot and got kicked out right after. So then it was in total club folklore that we
went undefeated.
Right? Yep. So I'd say that's probably my fondest memory.
Okay. I like that.
So thank you, Max. Always a pleasure having you on. Obviously congratulations on being named a captain this year. I think the honor couldn't have gone to another more fitting person that we have in our camp. So super happy to have you back, and it's always awesome to see you on training days. But thank you as always to our show sponsor, Summit Brewing Company. It is Maibach season, as I like to call it, Danger Bach. So Summit has announced that Maibach is on its way. The classic take on this classic brew that is easily drinkable and packs a powerful punch is starting to pop up around town. So if you see it at your local liquor store or on tap at your favorite swig house, get some people. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving to the community is something that means a lot to you, maybe it's time to give to the club that gives back. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game. Look for us this offseason hosting play events and partnerships with community centers around the city, and consider a tax-deductible donation to a truly city-focused organization. Hey, it's never a bad time to become a member of Minneapolis City. For less than the price of a night out on the club with your crew, $65 allows you to support the club and to get some cool stuff in return. You get an exclusive membership scarf, a member card that gets you 10% off at the club shop, and deals on Summit at our official game day bar, Palmer's. Plus, you get to vote on important club matters, including selecting membership board, choosing the scarf and kit designs. So visit Minneapolis or mplscitysc.com and make it happen. Do you have anything you want us to cover in the offseason on this show? Any hard-hitting exposés that you were hoping that we would undertake, send us a mail. It's easy. Hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch, or through email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. All questions, comments, and concerns are welcome. And finally, as always, complain to the club at MPLS-CitySC on Twitter. Again, that's all for this week's show. Thank you to Max for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the pitch in a few short weeks. I have been John. That was Nate. And until next time, you got hoofed.
Thanks, Drew.
Poster burning maple weeds, cradle major keys. Thinking back, I've been major since the minor league. So supreme, too much sauce off my olive NMDs. I could staple steez, bend the goat so I get the cheese. Never fall, rake them leaves and make sure every moment gets seized. And everything I see is